Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us and coming back. This week's HubSpot Hacks, we are very happy to have Tip from HubSpot. She'll introduce herself in a second and learn from all of her experience. What we're going to be, so if you can move to the next slide. What we want to go through today is everything around SalesHub and kind of mastering that, especially for the first part of the funnel with your inside sales or your SDR teams, but also be able to manage that. And Tip's going to be here to help us walk us through this. I think it's really for the SalesHub is really powerful part of HubSpot's platform today. Obviously, the CRM is now the center of this, but I think there are lots of features and there are lots of tips and tricks that you guys are new that I don't think that I'm seeing across the board that customers and users in HubSpot are only using, a bits here and bits here, and they're not utilizing and getting the maximum out of it. So I think after this webinar, you'll have a few ideas and be able to go in and start kind of taking it to the next level. Tip, do you want to introduce yourself? And thank you, first of all, for joining us. And it's a pleasure to have you on this webinar.
My pleasure, and thanks for the invite. And hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today's session. I really hope you're going to learn new things. What I'm introducing myself, let me know in the chat how familiar you are with SalesHub. Are you like a daily user of SalesHub, or are you like discovering it? It's good for me so that I know who I'm talking to, if I need to go into some details or get the bigger picture. So please let me know in the chat. But yeah, so my name is Stephen. I go by Tip because it's a difficult name to pronounce. As you can hear, I'm from France. I've been working for HubSpot for a bit more than 3 years. I helped developing the entire content of HubSpot Academy in French. Kyle Jepson. Obviously, I'm the French version of Kyle. But I'm very humble. I'm not pretending I'm like him. But yeah, this is what I've been doing for the last 3 years. And I recently moved to a new team, which is the platform ecosystem team, where basically I'm helping our partners, technical partners, working closer with some HubSpotters. So I do a lot of sales enablement, technical enablement, and I work for the entire Europe. So a lot of people. I'm busy, which is nice. A bit of context as well. I started my career at Oracle and I was a BDR. And believe me, I wish we were using SalesHub. It wasn't the case. So, things were a bit difficult. And then I joined LinkedIn as an account executive. So I worked in sales for around 4 years before joining HubSpot. That's it for me. Before we start, do you have any questions, expectations, anything you'd like to share with me before we start talking about SalesHub?
So I have an idea. I think you asked the question, and maybe we can just have it. It's something that I'm stealing from the HubSpot bootcamp that I was in for the last month. Maybe it's a good idea. We can add into the chat how many people are working with SalesHub. Just say yes, and how many people are not, and then we'll be able to look at the yeses and nos, and then we'll kind of answer the question you asked before. That's one thing we can do. And the second thing is, I do have a first questions is just on the high level around the SalesHub itself. When this was built, kind of, and most people are using it, in your experience, most people have those two separate sections where we have an SDR inside sales and a sales team, and those are separate processes. Or is that only for kind of bigger companies or companies, just like on process level before we deep dive and go into that? Are those two separate processes that you think is the right way to manage that. As you know, I'm qualifying my leads now, trying to get whatever qualification, if it's a demo request or a demo meeting or a first meeting, and then move it over to an AE or a salesperson. Is that that separation of the process, is there something you see a lot with different customers and in your experience, or is that only for bigger companies?
That's a really good question. Thanks for asking. I think, it's not because you work with a SDR or BDR as a salesperson that you should stop like prospecting. So, I guess every company should still have like this, like sales life cycle with like prospecting, generating leads. But of course, I mean, the differentiation in between SDRs, sometimes you have SDRs, BDRs, and AEs as well. So you have 3 layers. SDRs will be the one dealing with inbound, BDR is outbound, and then AE is obviously, the salesperson. And this is something you see in bigger corporations. So for smaller businesses, usually it's, one sales, sales workforce that basically works on the entire sales cycle. So yeah, depending on the company size.
Okay, great. And I have another question that maybe we don't have to answer now, but it actually came up with some of the customers that we're working with this week. And we can deep dive into when we go into the platform itself. But we have a customer that actually what they did is they've opened. For me, I've always said the first qualifying, like the SDR team works with a contact and a company, and they will use the lead statuses and they try to qualify, go through a qualification process. Then only when it's relevant do they open a deal, and that moves to, as you said, the AE or the salespeople. What they did is they decided that it's much easier for them to open a separate pipeline and call it an SDR pipeline, and then they manage that pipeline and then move from one pipeline to the S. So that's something new that I've seen. I don't know if the advantages or disadvantages from it, but they thought that was the right way to do it. We can maybe touch on that as well, how you think is the best way to manage those 2 processes or 3 processes, and which objects and which part of HubSpot you use.
That's interesting point. Yeah, I'm gonna give like my personal opinion, so it doesn't mean it's the truth or it's like what people should be doing. This is what I would do. Using a different pipeline for SDRs, I'm worried about people working too much in silos and losing, alignment within teams. And I think this is the opposite you want to do. You want to really connect your AEs with SDRs and have full visibility. Even though you can obviously, add some people to your pipelines and people can access them. Yeah, I don't know. Let me think about it during the session, then we can maybe discuss this at the end of the session. But yeah, top of mind, this is what I would say. Maybe not do it, but also, if it works for a company, speed, as long as it makes sense for you. This is basically what I'm going to talk about for the next 40 minutes. I'm going to give you tips. Obviously, it needs to be relevant for your business, your industry, and your processes.
Okay, right. Great.
I have the feeling that most of the people here today with us are like quite, comfortable with SalesHub. So I did prepare like, an introduction. So let's look at it together. And, if you know already everything, I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide, but just to make sure that we all really align. What is SalesHub? Like HubSpot is a platform which is composed of different hubs: Marketing Hub, Sales Hub, CMS Hub, Operations Hub, Service Hub, of course. And today we're only going to focus on Sales Hub. But bear in mind, there's a lot we can do using the platform. And of course, you have the CRM at the center of it. When you think about Sales Hub, really the idea is to smoothen any sales processes in a growing company, make basically, sales reps' lives easier and help them really focus on what they should be focusing on, which is closing deals, generating revenue, right? So the key features of Sales Hubs are, email templates, email tracking, document management and tracking, conversation intelligence. I like this one a lot. Call tracking, sales automation. You can schedule meetings. HubSpot payments is only available in the US at the moment, so I'm not going to spend time on it. Live chat, sales management playbooks. I'm going to talk about playbooks a lot in this session. Quotes, analytics, and of course, we do have a great mobile app. I won't be able to share my phone screen, but I really want us to also spend some time talking about this mobile app because I think it's a great asset. Before I dig in some of these features, is there any question? Is there anything you'd like me to talk about before I move on?
No, I think we can start. We have seen one request here also to see what are best practices around task queues and tracking outbound calls, lists, and follow-ups. So if we can touch on that as well, I think that'll be interesting.
Yes, so the narrative that I developed for today's session was really to put ourselves in the shoes of a, new SDR, like which processes you should be following when you hire a new SDR or you start, developing this early stage sales stages. So yes, we're gonna talk about task queues, and of course, Alan, if you have any questions, I have the chat open here on my screen so I can see your questions. Otherwise, you can also unmute yourself and ask me directly. I'm really happy not to be the only one talking for the next hour. So don't be shy. All right, so I sat down and I really thought about when I started at HubSpot, even though I wasn't working in sales, what are the the top things you have to do, you could miss them. And some of them might seem obvious, but not everyone does it. So let's talk about these points here. First of all, I think it's really important to train the teams. If you work, if you're a team of 10 people or more, obviously you want people to use HubSpot and SalesHub the same way. You don't want people to be, filling some notes differently than the others, because otherwise you're going to have frictions in your sales process, and this is not ideal. So sit down and align on how do we want to fill the data, which data is important, how do we gather this data, all these questions need to be answered, and have a kind of SLA, of good practices, how to keep our CRM clean. Because, you have a lot of situations where a salesperson can work on one account, on one contact, and, months pass by and then another person can maybe start prospecting this account. And you really want to make sure that people have filled the CRM the best possible way, to make sure that the prospect has a great experience. And of course, there's collaboration in between people in the team. I hope it makes sense. So that was also my second point, to keep your CRM clean. It's something really important. So during my introduction, I told you that I was part of the platform ecosystem team. So actually HubSpot is a great platform. Obviously, we do a lot, but we can't do everything. We're not we can't do everything at the moment, at least, but we do integrate with many different softwares. Just to quote a few, if you need a calling software, we do integrate with Aircall, CloudTalk, Dialpad, many of them, and so on and so forth. I think we have more than 1,000 integrations, so it's a big ecosystem. So what's really important is to, analyze your tech stack as a company and integrate all the other softwares you're using into HubSpot. Very basic one, of course, connect your Gmail or Outlook inbox to HubSpot or to SalesHub. And then you can basically log every conversation you're having, every email you send, everything is going to be automatic. And you don't need to, log your emails, go in HubSpot, log your email, and then if you get an answer, like add this answer. And this is the process that I was following back in my BDR days. So it was a lot of time spent in, admin work. So yeah, these integrations exist to make people's life way easier and have an automation in most of the processes. Nothing new.
And sorry, I just have a question. And then I'll be able to log not only my emails, my calendar, my meetings, I'll also be able to log my calls, as you said, if I'm using Aircall or using HubSpot or any other system that's connecting, so that the outgoing calls, those can be logged on the contact or on the company level as well, correct? On the contact level.
Exactly. And speaking of which, this is, this is also what we do with conversation intelligence. So as we log these calls, we can also analyze them. We use Gong at HubSpot. Obviously, we do integrate with Gong as well. So, it's super interesting to see, especially for like SDRs or BDRs, to see how much you spoke during a call. Obviously, if you're doing a discovery call, you don't want to be the one speaking 90% of the time. I don't think it's a very efficient discovery call when you're the one talking all the time. You can also pick up some, names or do competition analysis, for example. I love conversation intelligence, and I think this is a sexy / hot topic at the moment with all the AI conversations happening. And I think it's a great way to improve SDRs and BDRs performances by, always auditing what they did to make sure that they improve. I hope it makes sense. And I'm speaking different language.
Before you go to the next point, I just remembered something I want to get your input about when you talk about keeping the CRM clean and aligning internally to use the tools the same way. So what we started implementing in the last, couple of months is that we saw that when we're training our customers and helping them train the SDR team and the AE team, we were sending them to do, spot training and then how to learn the platform and that. And then we saw that probably the best thing to do is to actually build a guide with screenshots based on the playbook that we've decided upon with the customer, so that they can actually use that as a training tool, whether we help them do it or they do that going forward. Let's say exactly what you're talking about, like an SDR comes on. So it's not, because everyone works differently. And then you say, okay, you go in here, you create the contact, automatically a company gets created. Now you go in and how do I add my email? And not the actual setup, but what is the process that I do, setting up a call, setting up a meeting, how do I track that? Because there are millions of ways of doing it and everyone's going to do it differently. And then you can also update that document and improve on it, and then everyone will get the new version. So we saw that including screenshots and even, GIFs and actually seeing, it's much easier to train the team that way so that it's clear. And then we can also see if this is the right process, how do we improve on that? What's your take on that?
100% yes. This is a great best practice, I think. Obviously, because people there's always a lot of turnover, people leave. You don't want to have one person that owns the entire knowledge about processes and how to keep a CRM clean. To have, when I talked about SLAs, obviously, I think if you have it formalized into a document, it's the best. And things are also moving all the time. So obviously you can update this document, adding screenshots. If you look at HubSpot, the tool itself changes every day. When I was working on the academy, if you look at some certifications, when we share our screens, the platform, even the UX does look so different. So I think it's important to also maybe good practice could be also to name a DRI, a person who will be in charge of updating this, training document every semester or every quarter. I don't know. It depends on how many, like the growth of the company, of course. But yeah, definitely. And also, why not like adding videos? This is what we do at HubSpot France for new hires. Like they do have like a specific training on best practices, how we like to communicate in the CRM, like snippets we use that could be helpful, all this good stuff. And of course, and also I think it's really important to establish naming conventions. So when we talked about earlier, like having this kind of like playbook / guide for new hires, about like processes and how you want to fill the CRM. I think also agreeing on like naming conventions is really important. If you look at HubSpot versus Salesforce, for example, the way we say companies are different, or the way, at least in French, I know leads are being translated differently. So yeah, make sure that internally you align on processes and also naming conventions. And of course, keep them updated. Or up to date, sorry. If there's like any changes in some like laws or anything, you just really don't want to be using like outdated data in your snippets. Does it make sense for snippets, or did I lose you?
No, I think that's really powerful. I don't think that's being used enough. Obviously, if the HubSpot BDR team is using it, they know what they're doing. And then I like the idea of the backslash. You said that you can choose the industry and so on and set everything up so you have kind of everything in front of you when you open your notes, and then you can actually know what questions to do, which obviously part of that is a playbook as well. But I think the snippets is really great, because then you have those specific questions. Because I'm assuming that that's part of the problem, is that one is, when I was talking about the guide at how to actually go and do stuff, but then you have your own mini playbook or your process, and it's okay, well, now I got on the call, as you said, with someone from marketing automation. I should be asking these questions, and someone from real estate, I should be asking these questions. And you don't have to, you don't have time to try and start from scratch and remember, okay, hang on a second, in my last meeting 3 weeks ago with the real estate, I asked this. And then it's very, that's number one. And number two is what you said, which is, I think is amazing, is that it can be managed on a team level or on the BDR level. Someone can be in charge of it, and then they can get the most updated version of the snippet, the improved version of the snippet, in everyone's portal. So I think that is really powerful.
100%. And actually, it's a good transition to our second point of this slide, is playbooks. We talked a lot about playbooks already, but again, some tips of when to use playbooks and how. You can use them per sales stage, first call, discovery. That's for SDRs, and obviously for AEs, then you can move to negotiation. So playbook, is just it's this guide that helps you with having conversation. And again, you can add some specific questions. That's my last point, actually. Use interactive questions. Obviously, you don't want to ask yes, no questions. This is not good practices for salespeople. You want to ask open questions to get as much information as possible. You can also create playbooks per industry. Again, at HubSpot, we work with a lot of different companies. So obviously, the questions you're going to ask to a CMO in the medical sector is going to be different than the questions you're going to ask to a CEO in the tech startup, right? So actually, per industry and also per persona, I think could be interesting. Obviously, per product, for new hires, we talked about that. And yes, always, I'm going to keep repeating this, but keep your data clean, update them. I think quality should be over quantity. So same with snippets, don't go for it straight away. We want to have dozens of them. Sit down, brainstorm with the team, what could be very, very important and essential, and try to keep them organized and not have too many, just very relevant ones. That would be my last tip. Any questions on snippets and playbooks before I move to view management?
I do have a question about the playbooks. So you said, I think in the conversation we had last week as well, you said one of the things that, again, one of the issues we always have is if you can do it, doesn't mean it's a good idea. So now you start creating a playbook for every single sub process, and then the way it's built at the moment in HubSpot is that the playbook pops up on the right-hand side, and then I already have 7 different versions that I have to choose from. So one thing, obviously, it will be interesting to see if they can, if I can choose an industry, and then based on the industry, I'll only have the relevant playbook popping up. And I don't know if that exists at the moment, but what you're saying is start with the basics. Make sure that the main processes are 1 or 2 processes for each of those teams, and then you can have as much information inside their playbook so that they can start, and they're not there to have a question while they're in the middle of the call and says, "Oh, hang on, am I supposed to use this playbook or this playbook?" So that's what you're saying, to kind of keep it simple so that it will work properly, correct?
Yes, and to be honest, at HubSpot at least, playbooks are mostly used for new hires. When you're like a confident sales, or like you've done sales or BDR role for like 6 months or plus, you don't need to use playbooks anymore because you kind of know what questions to ask. However, I guess when you implement like a new campaign, let's say, you want to launch an ABM campaign, you can create a playbook for that because it's something new. You want to make sure everyone is aligned, and I think it makes people's lives way easier. I think there's like 2 kind of people. There's also people who don't like playbooks because it's kind of like narrowing the conversation. But I do believe that for SDRs, at least, it's important to have a very, not narrow, but like have a direction to follow. Like, I'm sorry, but like a discovery call is a discovery call. Like there's information
Very
you need.
structured. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. But yes, so yeah, my advice would be like use, of course, number 1 playbook is for new hires, and then the rest depends on like the seniority of your team, the needs, and I don't know, like blockers they might see.
Okay, great. Mm-hmm.
So again, when speaking to the BDRs at HubSpot that I spoke with, they really told me like, what's key for them is like the view management. So we're gonna have a quick look afterwards during the demo on like what I mean by view management, but basically to make your life easier as an SDR, you need to think about the properties you want to be using, the filters you want to be using to find like the right list of people to add to your task queue. Going back to the question that I saw earlier on the chat. And instead of like, always like trying to dig in all the data you have in your CRM, you want to have like the first thing you see when you log in is like this view of all open opportunities or accounts in your portfolio, which makes some sense. So I just like threw some ideas here, and I wanted to take like a few minutes to also brainstorm together because, as I said, this is my opinion, but I'm sure there's like tons of other possibilities. But things you need to keep in mind when you think about your view management is obviously, so the account owner, as a SDR or BDR, you are mapped to like an AE. So first of all, you want to make sure that what you see in your view is all the accounts linked to a specific person, like the AE you're mapped with. The status of the account, is it active? Is it inactive? Deal properly. Is it like a close lost? Or is there like a deal already open with it? So in this case, I don't touch it. Ratings. So you have you have some AI in HubSpot that would give you some ratings about an account. So that's interesting as well. Like if we have like a high rate, maybe we want to reach out to this account. Last activity as well. So when was the last time that I touched this account, or also the contact last activity? When was the last time that they had an interaction with HubSpot? That's a good one to get. Recent conversion, very interesting in B2C. When was the last time that these people or this person took an action with HubSpot? Is it like downloading a white paper, like taking a certification in the academy, sending an email? All these things are conversions. And also super important, but use the mobile app. I don't think we talk enough about it. It's a great app. It took some time to like get fully developed, but nowadays I find it super useful, especially for people who are, like traveling a lot, because you can get all your data in it, and you can do a lot already. Like you can scan business cards directly and like pull the information from these business cards directly into your CRM. So if you go to a trade show, happy days, instead of like getting all the business cards and like sitting down. True story, like it happened to me in the past, and like you sit down and manually you need to add like all the people's names in your CRM. Good luck with it. While thanks to the mobile app, you can just scan them and you get all this information directly in your CRM. So that was my ideas. As I know, like most of you are already using SalesHub. I'd love to see in the chat like some other suggestions, like for you, what are some things that we should keep in mind? Like when we use SalesHub, it can be like properties, it can be features, like it's a very open question, but I'd love to pick your brains, folks.
Okay, great. Well, one thing that I learned in the last 2 weeks is that views is interesting, because I always, we were kind of dumping, on the contact or the company level, and then you break it down the fields on the left-hand side based on groups and so on. But another way of looking at it, as you wrote here, is views, which I think is really powerful, because then I can save different types of views and then decide on a table level what specific fields I need for that industry or for that conversation or for that list of people. And then obviously through the table, go in and update the data. And then I don't need to go in one by one and only see the fields that are relevant for that process that I need. If I need to add anything, then I'll deep dive and go into the company object level or the contact level. But I think that is very powerful, because that you can actually, you can customize on team level or on a personal level. And then you can really customize the CRM for yourself or for your team, which on the contact level, I can up to a certain point, but it allows me to work, especially as an SDR, when I'm going to go in the morning and see, okay, a view of all these people I have to reach out to. But I'm interested, as you said, now account status, deal property ratings, last activity, and then have that on a field level on a view as well, which I think is really powerful. And I don't have to go one by one, click in and say, okay, what's happening? And decide which is the one that I'm going to reach out to.
Exactly. You need to customize your views the way it makes sense to you, to your business, to your activities. So I'm gonna stop sharing these slides, and I'm gonna start sharing my screen. I'm just gonna get it a bit bigger for you all. Can you see properly? Is it okay?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna start with like the company's like views, and you can see here I created this view called my BDR view. So if you look at the filters that I put, to what I said, the company owner, so like the AEs I'm working with, last activity date, I want people who that I haven't reached out throughout the last 90 days, and rating. So I just put unknown here because just like my demo environment is not very updated. So otherwise there would be nothing showing up here. But here you want rating to be high or low. If you want to like target very like low rated companies with like one single email, could work as well. And that's like just an example. Well, of course, you can create the view with like all the properties that make sense to you. And also, this is really important. It's also like the properties you have here, you can move them, you can change them to what makes sense to you. So if you look at my contacts here, for example, where am I here? Here you can see like the stages of the lead, when it was like created. Like you choose basically what makes sense to you and what you want to see straight away. And here I created like different type of views. Here's like my unassigned contacts if I want to make sure that, I change the owner. Basically,
and you can edit the fields without having to go in one by one, correct? I can go and update the phone number here if I get off the call with them, right in here, make changes.
Yeah, like here I could. Okay. Too many, and that's good actually. Like the platform is so clever that he's gonna tell you that it's not the right phone number, which is great. I'm all about clean data and like having a clean CRM. So this is really great. And then, so let's say you have like your list of contacts that you, that you sorted that companies. Then you can select all these companies and then you can create some tasks. So then tips on like task management, obviously be very, very organized. So now there's like a few new features that came out last year, like end of year last year. You can set like a priority, which is always nice if you want to organize your day. Like you start the day with like high priority tasks, and then you can finish with like the low ones. If you want to attend to a specific queue, you can create different queues. A good tip could be having like queues for like first calls, and then like follow-up calls, or queues for like follow-up emails. Anything that makes sense, but I think this is a good tip as well. And obviously you can like set some reminders if you want, like the due date, which is great. Like it's gonna avoid you like using this, like nice little lists where you do like all you to do, and this is gonna be all automatic in your CRM, which is what we want. I have all the information and all my activities logged in one single place. Something that I wanted to show you as well is the level of customization, you can have on HubSpot. Because if now, for example, I go to this record here, so I can see here an overview. So top of the list for me would be like recent communications and these like open deals with this person. For other businesses, maybe they would like to see the latest, like, I don't know, shipments they got or payments, depends on what makes sense for your business. And here as well on the right, you can edit all this information. On the left, you can edit all this information. The word is your oyster. Basically, you do whatever you want with HubSpot. It needs to be super impactful and, like meaningful for what you're doing. So if you go to record customization, and here you can literally customize every single place in your record. So like middle, right, left, and so on and so forth. This is quite new. I don't think you could do it like a few years ago. So I think this is great. And I think this is where like HubSpot is moving toward. It's really to make sure that people can have like a really high level of customization. I wanted to show you like a bad example of like snippets non-management, which is here. Again, this is my demo environment that I share with many people. So, you have a lot of snippets here. The one I wanted to show you in my example was a GDPR one. And so here, for example, you can be like doing a call, your prospect mentioned GDPR, and then you just like dial, like you write #GDPR, and then you need to think about talking about the policy, the cookies, and data storage. That was the example I wanted to show you. Okay, 10 more minutes. There was a few things I wanted to show you. Obviously, there's a lot of analytics you have in HubSpot, and this is one of the, for me, it's super powerful. It's important to track and measure what you're doing and how well you're doing your job. So for SDRs, obviously you want to see, I don't know, here, what did I put? You want to see the performance of your sequences. You want to see who in your team is doing the most activities, if there's any incomplete tasks. So that's great as a rep. It's great as a manager as well, because you can have like, clear overview of everybody's, activities. Also, like, number of templates that are being used. So there's a tons of information. And my last point that I really wanted to discuss is ChatSpot, because, like, it's pretty new. And actually, you can use ChatSpot for a lot of sales activities. Have you heard about ChatSpot, or is it something that you like already started to use? Love
Interesting to hear what people on the webinar think. We've started using it, obviously. Yoni from our team has become, we're changing his name to Yoni AI, because that's what he does all day, is he's dealing with that. But I think that's the future. I think in I don't know how long, but you're going to go into this pane as an SDR, as an AE, and you're not even going to log into HubSpot in the back end. I think you're going to go in here and you're going to manage your entire process from here. You'll be able to put in everything. Obviously, all the research I can do here. I can add contacts. All the prompts are here. I can have those conversations, and I could probably I'll be able to throw my notes in here, have the conversations, pull up data. So for the first process, when I'm doing the research and then finding the contacts before I have, the call, for sure, it makes, it's very powerful to do it from here.
Yeah, definitely. And I was doing I was playing with ChatSpot before this session, just to see, like, because it changes every day, like HubSpot, so like it's growing, and I know, like, there's only little we can do right now. I know in, I don't know, a few weeks, maybe a few months, and in a few years, like, we're gonna be able to do so many different things with it. But if you click on CRM, there's many things you can do with it already. I really like the product showcase email. I found it really cool. So, like, you want to, like, it's great for like writing really good prospecting emails. So, like, if your product is a great software in the tech industry and you're selling to a CEO, and then it's gonna, like, just write you, like, for you on your behalf, like, an amazing prospecting email. Obviously, always to take with a pinch of salt. I would advise to try to reformulate some parts so that, like, it came from you. Yeah, I'm reading the chat as well, and a really good point as well. Like, sensitive commercial information could flow into training. So I think we need to be careful with AIs at the moment, but I'm hopeful that, being based in Europe, data is such a hot topic. Like, us as customers, like, will be like, there's a lot of protections. And I had this conversation yesterday with one of our solutions partners, who said that by 2025, so in 2 years, there'll be, like, a lot of regulations around AI, so protection as well. But again,
Yeah.
Okay. And
yeah.
you have some experience, like, okay, well, this is always a problem when you do live demos. Good for me. It was really important to discuss just ChatSpot as well, knowing that, it's in the beginning, but I think it could be very interesting for SDRs. I'm just checking. Yes, ChatSpot, we talked about it. I added here on the slides, like, a little summary of what I talked about, so feel free to read afterwards. And just to make sure, because I know we have 6 minutes left, for me, if there's things you need to, if there's direct actions you should be taking after this session, there will be, of course, to start cleaning your CRM if it's not already clean. Create some views. If you don't have any views created so far, create some playbooks. And, again, you need to do like 10 of those, but, 1 is a good start, at least a few snippets. And yeah, then, like, start, creating a task, queue, and, like, start calling, like, let's get to work. And also, if you haven't taken it so far, I highly recommend taking the HubSpot Academy certification, Say Software. Kyle is the professor in English. I'm the professor in French. We have it in Japanese, in German, in Spanish. So, you know, if you want to practice a bit like different languages, you can also try it. And happy to connect on LinkedIn if you want to keep having this conversation. If you have some follow-up questions, really happy to answer them. I really try to do my best. I only had an hour. There's a lot to discuss, so I really wish that you learned a bit today.
Thank you. This was excellent. I know we just have 1 or 2 minutes left, but I did want to ask you, when do you think like sequences is something that is there and is really powerful? I'd like to get your input. When is the right time? Again, it's around SLAs, it's around, but if we automate that process by, you know, having the first email go out and then having a follow-up task being created or whatever tasks, that automation of that sales process for the SDRs or for the AE, is that something that you think is kind of everyone should be using, or you're seeing that some companies are using it this way, some companies is not sure? And kind of what are the advantages of? For me, I think it's a huge advantage. Someone has to go and build it, obviously, and then, you know, update it. But I think that's really powerful, and I see some companies are using it very well and a lot, and some companies much less.
And I think it's sad because it's a great functionality, and I think, you know, sequences should be used like all the time, just to make, because otherwise, for me, even though you are like on top of the game, I'm sure you can make mistakes, you can forget. Like, I mean, when I was at BDR, literally everything was manual. I was like writing down everything on a notebook, and as you know, strict and organized as you are, you know, you're only a human, so sometimes you miss things and you forget things, or, you know, sometimes you don't realize that there's a bank holiday coming, but the system does know. So yeah, like for me, I would like leverage sequences all the time, create different sequences, obviously, like the first one, you know, and you don't need them to be too complex, but yes, especially for SDRs, like for me, it's important to make their life easier, because it's not an easy job. You know, like need to like hammer the phone, and call and call and call. So if you can already like use some systems and automation to make their life easier, I think that'll be a great way to make sure that, you know, they feel empowered and they do a great job.
The other thing that I saw is that what's interesting about sequences, what's interesting about HubSpot at the moment, is that, you know, sequences is part of the SalesHub, but in essence, everything is part of the platform. So like workflows is used across the different hubs. So sequences, I also saw, can be used by the sales team, by the AEs, by the service for the customer, and have a new customer. So build that process automated, by even the marketing. If the marketing has to, you know, even internally start a process of, let's get an ebook ready, you can actually build the sequence that way, where you internally set out an email, follow up with them. I mean, you just can think about, how do I automate a process, which is a combination of different things, and obviously the SDR connected to LinkedIn and reaching out and connecting them. So I think that's the way people can, you know, whether you're working on the sales team or any other teams, and think of looking at HubSpot and get your, you know, your HubSpot admin or whoever else is managing the system to how can we actually automate it so that the people can concentrate on the important things.
And I mean, Rome wasn't built in one day, and I understand that it takes time, but it's such a powerful tool that taking the time to implement it, to like put some processes in place, create SLAs, is gonna make your life so much easier afterwards. So I think it's worth the time that you put at the very start of using HubSpot, and then, you know, everything is automated, and literally just need to like do your core job, which is like calling and generating revenue.
Okay, great, excellent. I'm not seeing any more. I think we're kind of running out of time in 1 minute. First of all, I wanted to thank you. This has been really, really interesting. I think there's lots of value. We'll be sharing, obviously, this recording. I think there's a stop in one for about half a minute, so but everyone will remember exactly what you said, so it's fine. The recording with everyone, and the presentation, and if there's everything else that I think we can follow up on and I'd love to have you back and talk about another topic in a couple of months. That would be great.
Of course, anytime. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for your time. Thank you for being in today. And yeah, feel free to add me on LinkedIn. Happy to connect.
Thanks a lot.